Although I miss the peak of 90s arcade racers back in their day, whenever I see a game that says inspired by 90s arcade racers, well, I'm already halfway to the checkout, so when 4PGP landed on Switch 2, promising some low-poly Formula 1 style chaos, couch multiplayer, fast tracks, and that old school just one more race energy, well, I was curious, guys. So basically, whenever I see bright colours and fun racing, I turn into that happy meme that I keep seeing everywhere on my feeds. So this is 4PGP, or 4-Player Grand Prix for short, a fairly new Japanese arcade-style inspired racer from a developer called 3Goo. I think that's how it's pronounced. Anyway, this is obviously a love letter to the 90s arcade racers like Ridge Racer, Ace Driver, you know the gist. The version that we're looking at today is the Nintendo Switch 2 edition, and that will set you back £24.99. So the simple questions that we want to get to the bottom to today is it any good? And is it worth your money? Alright, so let's get into the meat of it. This is a very straightforward racing game, and honestly, that simplicity is part of the charm. Let's look at the modes. You've got a championship mode where you race across 3 events, earn points, and if you finish in first, you'll unlock something, and we'll get to the unlockables later. There's quick races, which is self-explanatory, time attack, which is great, but the most frustrating part of that is there's not online leaderboards, so it's entirely locked to just your console, so you're just going to be beating your own times over and over again. Not really ideal, but hey, at least it's there. And then there's a lot of local multiplayer options, including Game Share with the Switch 2 and the Game Chat with Game Share as well, which I personally haven't used on my Switch 2 at all, but, you know, it's nice that it's there, and if you're going to use it, cool. So the setup, as I say, is very simple. You can get to split screen very quickly, and on Switch 2 the performance holds up really well, even with multiple players on the screen. Now, I personally have only played with one other player, so I've had to find footage of 4 players playing at once, but I can see that it's very smooth. What I really like is that the entire game, except Time Trial, can be played with up to 4 players, which is, you know, pretty cool and kind of rare to find these days. And I know that's the name of the game, but I was just expecting it to have like a single player mode and then just a multiplayer mode separate, but the fact that it's all merged together is pretty cool in my books. Okay, so the menu design is equally arcade fitting. There's the 4PGP logo moving around the background, bright colours, flashy things. It's very arcade inspired. The only thing really missing is a big pop-up screen asking me to pay more money. So the game also has a bunch of legally distinct Formula 1 style cars, all taken directly from the 90s, complete with fake sponsor branding, and while I do appreciate the effort, some of the early cars do kind of blend together visually. You do unlock faster cars, but getting them is not exactly a casual process, and that becomes important later. Track-wise, there are 14 circuits, and they're based on real-world locations. You get tracks that obviously don't actually get to use the names, but Monza, Monaco, Albert Park, Spa. Obviously they're not direct licensed versions, but they're really good. The tracks are one of this game's biggest strengths. They're simple enough to learn, familiar enough for Formula 1 fans to just jump into, and legally distinct enough to avoid a lawsuit. This is where the game is at its best though. You hit the line on the track, ease off the accelerator, tap the brake just a little bit, and glide through a corner like you've suddenly remembered how arcade races are supposed to feel. So when it clicks, it really clicks. The issue is that the game often seems to want a cleaner race than it's actually willing to give you. Because these are open wheel cars, obviously contact is deadly. One tiny tap on your wheels can send you off the track. In a serious Formula racing sim, you know, fine, obviously that makes sense, but in a throwback arcade racer where half the joy should come from that chaos, it feels way too punishing, and that would be fine, but the AI does not help. Oh my god, they drive around like it's their first day in kart racing, not like professional Formula 1 drivers. Yeah, sure, sometimes I'd brake a little bit too early in anticipation of a sharp corner, but then I would just get launched into the back of and sent off. Now, this isn't an issue on rookie difficulty. In fact, the game is pretty much too easy. It's basically just a way to learn the tracks with other drivers on there. But once you move up beyond that, because you can't actually unlock anything in rookie mode, the drivers become tiny, aggressive goblins that somehow made it to Formula 1. They'll crowd you, tap you, block the line, and because one small mistake can knock you completely out, races can go from a lot of fun to why am I still playing this in like a second. So 2 tracks in the game are locked behind you completing the championship modes on the highest difficulty, that's the Middle East and USA. There's also various cars scattered throughout the game to unlock by completing championships also on different difficulties. There's also a couple of cars you unlock via playing co-op, such as the safety car you get for having more than one player finish in the top 3. I love unlockables in the game, but it does just force you to replay the same stuff over and over again. What's strange is that the higher difficulties can sometimes feel better, in theory. The cars are faster, the races are longer, well they're 5 laps instead of 3, drafting matters more because it's just not a thing in Rookie, and you technically have more time to recover if something does go wrong. But that only works if the game gives you room to recover. Too often, once you fall behind, catching back up can feel impossible. It's not, but it can feel that way. There's also a pit stop system, although calling it a pit stop might give the wrong impression. It's more like the boost refill thing from F-Zero. You pull in to this lane alongside the main straight, and if you press the boost button at the right time, you'll get a full refill. If not, you'll just get a little bit. On lower difficulties, stopping usually feels like a bad idea because the time loss is too big, but once you get into the higher speeds, oh man, you're going to want to do that like every other lap. So then it kind of ends up giving the game this weird contradiction. It wants to be a fast, simple retro arcade racer, but it punishes contact like a more serious racing game. It wants you to drive clean lines and master the rhythm of each track, but then it fills the track with NPC drivers who seem personally offended by your just mere existence, and that's frustrating because the driving itself is a lot of fun. Now, of course, this is a game that is made entirely better with friends. This is absolutely the way to play 4PGP. With friends, the chaos actually makes sense. If someone clips your wheel and sends your race completely into the bin, at least you can yell at them or throw a cushion or question their entire person. That's multiplayer racing, that's the social contract side of things. Because the game supports easy split screen and game share options, it feels genuinely built around that 4-player idea. This is not a racing game with a multiplayer mode bolted on because someone in a meeting said it needed one. This is a game where the name itself is literally telling you, don't play this alone all the time. There's also an assist mode, which is a smart inclusion for younger players or anyone who just wants a more relaxed time. Although having briefly tested it, I found that it just completely pulls you off of the actual racing line. I don't know. Anyway, there's gyro controls included too if you want a Mario Kart Wii experience, and while they won't be for everyone, it's nice to have the option. And technically, the game is very impressive. Docked, it looks crisp and holds 120 FPS, if you have a screen that supports that. But it will hold a stable 60, obviously. And handheld, the high frame rate makes it look even slicker, and for a game chasing a retro arcade identity, that smoothness matters a hell of a lot. It gives the racing a clean, immediate feel that really suits the style. Now, the soundtrack to this game is just a little bit more confusing. What's there is absolutely phenomenal. It has that punchy, energetic arcade cabinet vibe. I love it very much. It's the kind of music you imagine blasting out of a racing machine while your mate is yelling that the brakes don't work. But it takes that kind of inspiration of being an old school arcade racer very much to heart because it doesn't play consistently through the whole race. You hear it at the start, when you cross the lap line, and then on the final lap, but not as a constant soundtrack. And that, to me, is a bit of a strange choice because this game thrives on momentum. The music should be pushing you through every corner, and overtake, and near miss, but the silence in the middle of races can make things feel just a little emptier than they probably should. And that kind of sums up 4PGP as a whole. It gets so much right that the things it gets wrong stand out even more. The look, great. The speed, great. The multiplayer, fantastic. The track design, strong. But the AI? No, not invited. Okay, so should you buy this game on Switch 2? If you're looking for a solo racing game with deep progression, you know, forgiving arcade chaos and a long-term campaign to grind through, this isn't it at all. There just isn't enough here to keep solo players hooked for ages, especially when the difficulty curve feels quite cheap rather than challenging. But if you have friends around or you want a fast, simple, stylish split-screen racer with a modern frame rate, then 4PGP makes a lot of sense. This is a game that's at its best when everyone on the couch is shouting, laughing, so on and so forth. Is it worth $24.99? That's a very debatable question. That is going to entirely depend on the mileage you're going to get out of the multiplayer segments, because if you're just playing this as a single player, it is absolutely not worth spending that amount of money. Like, I know it's not that much for a game considering the price of new AAA releases, but this is an indie game with not much content. So $24.99 to me just seems a little bit steep. But if you're a big multiplayer fan and you think you're going to get a lot of mileage playing this with your friends, siblings, family, then yeah, it probably is worth it. At the end of the day, it's a fun, stylish retro racer with some great multiplayer energy, smooth performance, and genuinely satisfying driving. But the overly punishing AI does keep it from being an easy solo recommendation, so play it with friends and you'll have a good time. And that's really all I have left to say about 4PGP. So let me know in the comments, what do you guys think of this game? Are you going to pick it up? It is also on the original Switch, PC, and now PS5, so there are a good variety of platforms to play it on. So share your thoughts on that in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to leave a like, and if you haven't done so already, subscribe and tap that bell for notifications to stay up to date with my future uploads. A massive shout out to my Patreon subscribers for the continued support, and all I really have left to say is thank you and goodbye.